Oh my gosh, I hit the wrong button, guys. I've been talking forever and I didn't realize that you guys couldn't hear me, so thank you for telling me. All right, so let's start over. I'm Heather from Collaborate to Win, and I wanted to come to you live to tell you about different products. And today I was starting with fabric, as you could probably see from me motioning but couldn't hear. All right, so I started my career in interior design, and I've been in interior design for 19 years. So I started at a workroom that did super high-end window treatments and reupholstery. So I know a lot about how things are made, and that's what I want to help you with. And I've also worked for furniture stores, so I have this grasp of if this is your price point, let's look at this company. And if this is, so that's the stuff that I want to help you with every Thursday at 1 o'clock. I'm so sorry that my little microphone thing was off. So, all right, so let's see. So some things that you need to know with fabric, because that's where I'm starting, because for me, that's where my jobs start, is with the fabric. Once I have the floor plan down and I know what I'm going to be looking for, I get a lot of inspiration for mood and color and things like that by picking the fabrics. So COM is a term that designers use. That means customer owned material. And I wanted to start with fabric for our very first live because everything sort of builds off of the fabric. So when you're speccing fabric to go on a sofa and you're going to send someone COM, you want to make sure you're using the right things. And there was one time where even with window treatments, you want to make sure you got the right fabric. Natural materials breathe. Linen, cotton, wool, silk, they breathe because it was once alive and it will continue to breathe like it does. So if you put a drape over a heater and it's a natural fiber, it needs that contrast and it will breathe a little bit. So we had a designer back when I was working at the show at the workroom send us this very thick upholstery weight wool fabric, and it was going over a radiator. So there's a cotton backing over the wool, and the two of them kind of moved around a little bit. So it created this little puckering. And, the client had spent a lot of money on these very high-end draperies, and she was not happy with any tiny little bit of puckering that was happening. So eventually they had to take it back a couple times and sort of like weight things and release the cotton from the wool. And they were never totally happy because, there's certain things like gravity, you just can't fight it. It's going to win. So just be aware that natural fibers breathe. And then I was talking about how when you're speccing some COM, or even if you're going with a high-end upholstery company, they don't always cut their welting on a bias. And you want it on a bias because in order for it to go around a turn, you want that to be cut on a bias, because if it's not, it gets all funny. It gets wrinkly and weird. So try to make sure you get into every detail so that you spec bias cut welting. We had a Ralph Lauren sofa come in to be reupholstered, or maybe they were just doing cushions, and I thought, wow, this is so odd that they didn't cut the welt on bias. And it was like a denim material. There wasn't even like a reason to do it because you wanted the pattern to match up completely. It was just sort of like they cut a corner, but that sofa was probably $8,000 brand new. So very, very odd to me that even the high-end companies sometimes need to be told, cut your welting on a bias so that it just looks better. That's what has to be done. Okay, so other terms. CFA is a cutting for approval, so that they take a little snippet off of a bolt of fabric so that you can know you got the exact color that you want, because when it goes through and is made, if it's a solid fabric, it could vary just so slightly, and that could mess up your job. So sometimes you want to get a CFA or a cutting firm approval because they're going to cut a little piece of the actual material that they send you. Whereas a memo sample is just from a pile of samples that they have that they're going to send you out to make sure that you're getting your job kind of placed and ordered. Okay, so then sleaze was another one I was talking about, which is an industry term for fabric that moves around a lot. So a fabric that moves around a lot could be a problem for you if you're doing like a window seat cushion. This was another issue I saw with somebody who came in when I was working at the workroom. We did a long window seat cushion in this fluffy, yummy, silky chenille fabric. It was nice and thick, and just you would want to cuddle up on that. And window seat cushion, like, perfect, right? The only thing was that it was so silky and soft and thick that it moved around. So every time that somebody sat down, the fabric would just move a little bit, so that box cushion was it wasn't perfect after you sat on it for a while. So there's sometimes I forget we had to do. I think we had to like remake that whole cushion. I think we maybe sent it out and backed it. And I think we might have even said, don't even do a box cushion, just do a knife edge. So like one welt across, so that way it doesn't look so, off, because the fabric just was doing that. Also, certain fabrics are softer and more pliable, and so they will sit on a chair or a cushion a little bit more soft. So sometimes it's the cushion that you're picking and the material that goes on it that gives it more firmness. When I was recently doing a cushion test, we at High Point, I was with a friend, and we went through and we sat on this and then sat on that one and sat on that one, and it's like the Goldilocks and the Three Bears, finding just the right porridge. So if you wanted that soft down cushion and you wanted it to feel really soft, you should also pick a really soft fabric, because they had their down cushion with like a linen cotton blend, and it was pretty stiff. So it didn't sink in as much. So these are just like the crazy details that interior designers have to deal with all the time. And I've got, 19 years of experience, and it's a little bit different because I start off at a workroom where I got to see how everything was made. And then I went to furniture stores and learned about, the construction and how things are priced and whatnot. So I have a little bit of a unique knowledge base that I can share. So, okay, so then where things ship from. So this is interesting. So when I started, most of our fabric was American made. And then slowly we got, those mills went out of business, and China now has a lot, and sometimes we still buy from the UK and things like that. So why do you care about these things? Well, if it comes from China and it's back ordered, it's going to take a lot longer for you to get that fabric. Same thing with the UK. If it is back ordered, it's going to take at least probably 2 more weeks than it would if it was American made, because of customs. So those are things to think about. And on the tags of your memo samples, you get a lot of details in here. So this one says made in the UK. Sometimes they say it and sometimes they don't. This one here actually doesn't spec where it's going to come from. So on the back of the fabrics, you have a good amount of information. So this one is poly, viscose, and cotton, which is a nice blend. It's backed, and it has S for solvent clean, which means dry clean only. So you have to have like a company come to the house if this sofa needs to be cleaned. A W means water-based. So if you had the fabric was, one of these great new things that has the ability to be washed with water, a damp blotting will be able to get stains out. So just pay attention to solvent clean or water-based. And the codes they use, S is for solvent. This one actually spells it out, but sometimes they just write S. and sometimes they just write W. So W for water, S for solvent. At least it's easy that way. Another thing to talk about is the fact that fabrics come generally 54 inches wide, seam just like that's it. For shears can come 118, sometimes even longer than that, so that way you don't have as many seams, and you can, 1 yard gets you so much further than it would if it was only 54 inches wide. So that's something you have to think about when it comes to long cushions and where they're going to seam things. So it's very popular right now, and it looks great to have one seat on that sofa, one bench cushion. But you got to know that the fabric's only 54 inches wide. So if that's a 60-inch length, you're going to have seams. And they generally don't put the seam right down the middle of the cushion. They try to put it at the ends. And if it's a good company, they will, cut it and line it up and match it. But if you're careful, tell them, please match the pattern and cut your welt on bias. So those are two things to always remember. And the more detail you send someone, it just covers your butt, because they can't come back to you and say, well, you didn't say you wanted that welting on the bias. You didn't say you wanted that. So don't take for granted, write in detail what you want done, so that if a problem does happen and your custom sofa comes in, you can say, well, I did tell you I wanted my welt on the bias. I did tell you I wanted that fabric matched. And when you're writing up what they have, COM forms, write all the details out. The more detail you give, the more your butt is covered. Okay, so what else did I need to tell you guys about? Well, thank you for joining me. That's one thing I don't know if I said already. I'm really happy to be here. And I can tell you a little bit about price point with fabric companies. So you've got some, I don't want to call it, like let's say standard companies would be Stout, Robert Allen, Cravat, Doralee, and then there's the more high end. And the industry keeps changing, which is why it's so important for us to stay on top of everything. Where a few years back, Cravat bought Brunswick and Fee, and now I think they might even own Stroheim. And the Brunswick and Fee and Stroheim, those are a little bit higher end. So if Osborne and Little, higher end, automatically your starting wholesale price is going to be in the $100 and up range, whereas your Stout, Robert Allen, Cravat, Doralee, those guys, starting point for drapery weight, it's probably now like 35 starting point. So there is a difference when things jump, and I've noticed that anything I'm attracted to is always more expensive. But that's the thing about good taste, right? So so that's some guidelines. And another thing I find is that clients think if something is expensive in the fabric, it probably means it's stronger and made better. But that's not always true, right? So if you have a silk fabric, that's not necessarily something you're going to want to upholster with, but it's an expensive fabric because of what it is. And so it's important to explain that to them, so they're not thinking, well, this one's more expensive, so it's going to wear better. It doesn't always mean that. And a lot of these tags will tell you what their double rubs are, because they have a machine that actually does this. And as soon as it starts breaking down, that's the number that they land on. So sometimes it's 50,000 double rubs, like this one. And this one is 30,000 double rubs. So that's the test that they do. So you can tell if it's going to be a little bit stronger or not as strong. So it's surprising that this one's like 50. That's really strong. But it's linen and viscose. So linen is going to have that wrinkly look no matter what you do. I don't care how much you iron it. You got to be okay with a little bit of wrinkly, natural look if you're going to spec linen for your clients, make sure they are going to be aware that that will always have a little wrinkle naturalness to it. And that's part of the beauty. Just like a natural silk has those slubs in it, the little like bumpy things every once in a while, that is the beauty of it. That's why you're buying it, because it is so natural. And if somebody doesn't see it in their little sample and then they have a whole drape made and they're like, this is imperfect, that's going to be a tough conversation to have with the client, because that's just the nature of it. Kind of like when you cut wood and then there's a knot, and that's just the natural beauty of something. And usually companies kind of cut around that, but now with this like super driftwood natural thing, they could wind up with different. That is the natural material. So explain that up front so that they know what they're getting. So when it comes into the house, they are not disappointed. So what else about fabric? Other than I love it, and that's where all of my jobs start. I have systems now where I don't use books as much. I now use memo samples because I do like being able to just pin this up on the wall and walk back. Whereas when you have a book, you're like fussing with it to get it to lean right and then take a step back. And by the time you take a step back, it's flipped down to the next page, right? So I've gone to a memo system in some bookshelves here so that I pull from those. And I still do have some books. And it seems like the more I talk to sales reps, that they say most designers are going to memo sample systems instead of to books. So that's interesting. And, a good sales rep will be there for you. They will help you with, if I had one time some print that we loved and there was only 10 yards left of it. So he found, another 5 yards here or there, because not everything is exclusive to one house. So this happened to be a stout. I went to them and I said, I found this floral. Can you get me, this much? And it's a discontinued pattern, but he was able to find it and get me enough of it. So your sales reps are good sources to ask if they're good. I mean, I have plenty of sales reps that you never ever see, and you can contact them and they don't even email you back. Like, what is the point of that? So, and since, Collaborate to Win is all about buying power, let me tell you a little bit about how fabric companies work with buying power. So I focus in on one company to get the best price, because they want you to sell X amount of dollars every year. And you can't do that if you have, 5 different companies as a single designer. So I focused in on Stout. I liked their product. I thought, compared this same thing to this same thing, they had it for a little bit less. And my sales rep's pretty good. So I felt comfortable saying, I'm going to just focus on these guys. So that is my first go-to, because I want to make those minimums so that I get a better discount. So, normally the wholesale price is 50% off of retail. And because I've honed in and focused and I have this buy-in group, my sales rep Bart has given me 50 and 20% off. And their website is awesome. So I never have to even call them, because I can look up and see, okay, they've got 15 yards and I only needed 12, so we're good. Or, oh, I needed more yardage of that and it's back ordered, but it's, 6 weeks. Well, maybe I find something else. Or maybe that's the one and I'm just going to tell the client we have to wait, but that's really the one we want. So, so that's the world of discounted fabrics. They do not really do beyond 50 and 20 off. And you might be able to say to another company, well, if I have 30 yards of something, that's a whole bolt of fabric. That's a big amount. Even 20 yards, you might be able to get an extra 10% off. But they don't just give that stuff away. They even though they're selling online now, and that's not helping anyone. Well, I guess it's helping them, but it's not helping us. It's not helping us at all. But that's the discounts with fabrics. So it's not as good as like furniture. When we deal with furniture and stocking dealer, the price point is much better. You can make a lot more, but that's just how it's done. So all right, so we've got I don't know if I have any questions, but I'm glad I figured out my audio finally, right? Hi Stephanie, hey Cam, thank you guys for joining. Leslie, Lynn, Julie, thank you guys. I appreciate it. Sorry about that. I'm gonna avoid that button. It's right next to it going louder, so I hit the wrong one. All right, so join me next time. Our next Facebook Live here at Collaborate to Win is going to be about construction. So how sofas are constructed, how case goods are constructed, and price point for different items like that. So why is something more money than this? And so hopefully you're getting something out of this educational wise, and there's so much to this, right? So we'll just keep coming up with good ideas. And if you guys have questions, please post them. If there's, I want to know more about X, let me know, and we'll do a little show about that. So thank you for joining me, and okay, have a great day. Bye, everybody.